he does mention that he also took his best tax collector.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
So at the end, near the end, when it was Andrew and Philip, and they took the lady and the other.
The Ethiopian lady.
Yes, who was that person that came over and talked to him? No, he had.
With the turban on. Oh, he was a disciple of Nicodemus. He says, my rabbi, they said to him, who are you and why do you care? And he says, my rabbi, Nicodemus, has a personal interest in Jesus of Nazareth.
Wow.
He saw something when he was in Capernaum.
Yeah.
So Nicodemus has sent him. He knows that Shmuel is out to get him.
Yes.
And so he realizes Shmuel isn't really about the law. He just wants to destroy Jesus.
Well, does the.
Because that's when they ask the question, well, what if when he healed him, it wasn't the Sabbath? And he doesn't have any answer.
Yeah.
Because he's got to nail him on the Sabbath. And then, of course, the rabbi from Wadi Kelt comes. And of course, that's a throwback. If you can remember in the boat when Simon and Andrew are having their conversation, and and Andrew says, well, he healed the man on the Sabbath in the Wadi Kelt. He claimed that he was the Son of Man. They will have sent, notice to Jerusalem. And Simon turns to him and says, they don't even open the mail from Wadi Kelt. Don't worry about it. And so Shmuel says to him, well, did you tell Jerusalem? Well, we told them, of course we sent the word in, because we're they didn't even open the mail, But of course, Nicodemus is there to be able to say it's nothing. Because he believes that there's something authentic about who Jesus is.
There's something you have to do with Sadducees, so they bring that out for a reason.
The reason to it is because when Nicodemus arrives in Capernaum, in the very first episode, he comes into the synagogue in Capernaum. And Shmuel is there because he's the rabbi in Capernaum. And so, we are so honored, and it's such a wonderful thing. And here's the great Nicodemus of the Sanhedrin, and we are so blessed to have you here in Capernaum. And Nicodemus says to him, well, I came for the sardines. And Shmuel goes, and he says, it's a joke. So he does the same thing, and it falls flat. Like, Nicodemus did something that he can't do. So.
They really tie everything together.
Well, and it's wonderful the way Jesus has a wonderful sense of humor in this. He says to when he sits down with Quintus, well, you're not at all what I expected. I thought you were wild hair, animal skins, and Jesus listens to this. Let me grab a cup of coffee and then we'll go. All right. And the other nice thing that's Carol Ann.
It's such a second audio. And we are live and happen.
Oh, we've got my best side. All right.
Well, you were getting some good info. I'm like, I gotta.
That's right. All right. Go back to my notes. Okay, so this episode opens with Quintus coming in. I'm sorry, Atticus coming in to visit Quintus, and of course, when he gets there, he's all covered so that nobody knows who he really is in the outside world. And he wants to meet with Quintus. Well, of course, not get by the guard dog. What do you have? What do you want? Whatever. And so then he lifts up and he shows his armor and the fact that he is actually higher than Quintus. His position in the Roman military is a higher position than Quintus's. It would be like somebody from the CIA coming to a local police department. One's federal and the other is local. So Quintus he's local to that area, where who Atticus is, he's a larger thing. He goes up and down. He's basically a Roman spy. His job is to be under the radar, to listen and to talk and to know different things. And so we hear about that when he's walking with his soldier, and they're going to Zarephath to find the Ethiopian, to eventually arrest Jesus. Sorry, to detain him, he didn't get arrested. And they're having the conversation, and he says, well, do you know what Zarephath is like? Well, no, we're just gonna march in, we'll walk through the city, we'll grab Jesus, and we'll be home for breakfast. Atticus says, I think you may want to rethink that. I had spies there. Oh, you had spies, yeah. One by one, they all were killed, tortured first. Maybe we'll go around the city. That's a plan. I think that's a plan. So, so he says that he has intelligence on Jesus, which is why at that point that they decide that they're going to arrest him. And so then at that point, we switch to the disciples and we see it's the sons of Jonah and the sons of Zebedee, who are now, the Lord has sent all four of them to go fishing, but in true fashion, they're not all going fishing, because that means that it shows you how they are still like children. Because the four of them are sent to go fishing, and it's like, well, how come we can't stay and know what he's talking about? You know, well, why can't we stay and know? So then they have a contest to see who's gonna go fishing and who's gonna go back. So they're gonna throw the rock into the lake. And then when the sons of Zebedee win, Simon says, well, let's try the best of 2 out of 3. So then they go back, and of course the Lord knows, oh, you must have won a contest. How does Andrew feel about that? He'll get over it, don't worry. So Simon and Andrew go out to the fishing. So and then they're having that great conversation on the shore. You know, and Andrew is concerned, he's getting nervous because he understands. Remember, he was initially a disciple of John. And so he was the one who was most upset when John was arrested. And now he realizes, as he says, John will never see freedom again. He's going to die in that prison, which of course is true. We know that history will prove Andrew to be absolutely correct. So they're having this conversation. Andrew's getting nervous because he realizes that bad things are going to happen, and that his concern is to be able to, to try and protect Jesus. They all want to protect Jesus. And it's interesting the way Simon emerges as a leader in that conversation, because Andrew's the one that wants to blame Mary because she disappeared for 2 days. And, Simon says that, so you think you're never going to make a mistake again? You're so perfect. And then they go back and forth about Simon saying, about the zealot, well, he's the crazy Simon. And Andrew goes, oh, he's the crazy one, meaning you're the sane one. Well, I'm a married man, I have a respectable job. Really, that you practice disrespectfully. You tried to cheat the Romans. You gambled. Look at your life. Well, I am, but I won't do that anymore. And Andrew says, well, and I would know to go to Jesus. So it gives us another understanding of the humanity of how it was. It wasn't all harmonious. They didn't all just, the Lord embraced Mary. Matthew obviously did. But the rest of them are still a little anxious. But Simon is more understated because it was he and Matthew who found Mary in Jericho. So he has a different understanding about what she's been through, because both he and Matthew found her and brought her back to the camp at that point. And then, of course, as they're doing this, the soldiers arrive on the shore. And it really is again, remember, this is not in the Bible at all. There's no place in the Bible where we ever see that Jesus was confronted by the Romans, by the soldiers, and that he would have been taken into custody or detained in order to be able to be questioned. That's a pure construct. But clearly the writers take up the parallel from what the Lord will do eventually when he gets to have his trial before Pilate. But before the soldiers get there, they're having the conversation about the sermon. Now, we know it's the Sermon on the Mount, the fundamental point of whose gospel, but Matthew's gospel. Okay, Matthew's the one that, he's the only one who tells us about the Sermon on the Mount. Luke writes about the Sermon on the Plain. John doesn't even have the sermon. So that Matthew is the one he wakes at the end is because Matthew puts the Sermon on the Mount in his gospel. He's the only one that tells us about it. So they're very particular about who does what in the way they construct the series according to what we know by what they have written in their Bible, in the Gospels. And so the Lord is trying to explain to them that this is a very important thing. This will be a turning point in his ministry. And he really needs to be able to get it right. And so James and John come back and they want to, well, what did we miss? And of course, Matthew starts, well, these have security. This is Matthew, they don't need to know that. Yeah, they can pick up where we are. It's okay. But the Lord asks them when they were listening to John, what mattered, because all different types of people came, but each person felt that John was talking to them. And so the Lord is trying to get them inside the sermon, what's going to be important. And that's what we haven't even seen that yet. That's going to happen in season 3. Okay, and at that point, but the Sermon on the Mount is about the truth of who Jesus is and what he's calling us to be as disciples. And what all disciples who are chosen, what we're called to believe and to follow and to do from the Sermon on the Mount. So he says the why of this sermon is important. The details matter. What's important is each person that will be there. So that what I say will be for each of them, it will be about truth, and this will define our whole ministry. So this is a fundamental point of the Lord's public ministry. Then we flip back to Ishmael. She's trying to find out who he comes into the synagogue looking for Jesus of Nazareth. And so what we hear by the way he's greeted, oh, welcome, and they all applaud, and okay, we'll get the seat of honor prepared. No, I'm not here for any of that. I need to talk with you privately. And he says, well, you have been accepted by the great Sanhedrin for a special investigation. We are honored that you are here. So that's the way that we know he's been given a task. He's been sent by the Sanhedrin to investigate Jesus of Nazareth. So now he has a singular focus. He's got to get this Ethiopian woman. But the realization is, and what we're told is that her testimony doesn't count for anything because she's a woman and she's a foreigner. So he said, well, what difference does it make to find her? Her testimony is not going to be valid to the Sanhedrin. No, but she will lead us to the man who was healed as the paralytic. And those are the two that are in the square. Okay, that the paralytic is not the one, it's not Jesse, Simon the Zealot's brother. This is the man they lowered through the roof that caused the stampede that got Quintus mad. So they're telling the story of how in Capernaum, she brought him because she saw what he did to the demoniac on the road, and then brought him to be able to be healed. Mary of Magdala was the one that got them up on the roof. They broke open the tiles and they lowered him down. And then when they were interfering and they were blocking, they created the disbursement, and that was what caused the public stampede in Capernaum. So their concern is that the discussion goes back and forth about, that they want to find the man who was healed because he would be able to lead them to Jesus. His testimony would be valid. And the concern is, if what Jesus did, he did on the Sabbath, well, then he had violated the law. But then the other person says, well, what if it wasn't on the Sabbath? Well, Shmuel doesn't have an answer to that. Because it needs to be on the Sabbath for him to be able to have a complaint. But his concern is that if he can get the leper or he can get the man who was the paralytic to get them to testify, now he's got two testimonies, and if they were both on the Sabbath. But then the question is, well, would they turn in the man that healed them? And well, that would be bearing false witness. It's against the commandments. Of course they would have to do that. But that's his very strict interpretation of the law. And then, of course, at that moment, up comes the Levite, still in his outfit, from Wadi Kelt. And of course says, well, you should have written to Jerusalem, you should have told Jerusalem, we wrote to Jerusalem, nobody did anything. Of course, I'm thinking of Andrew, nobody opens the mail for one.
Yeah.
And then he says there are 3 women in his company, and that they were, chewing the grain on the Sabbath. And of course, Felix says, this man spreads like wildfire. Everywhere he goes, it's a problem. We've got to stop him. We've got to stop him. This is terrible. And so then Simon and Andrew are concerned about what's going to happen. They're having their conversation. Andrew's concern is that they're going to do to Jesus what they did to John. And and Jesus says to Andrew, get used to different, which is of course the tagline, get used to different. And Simon says, well, let's just fish. So then we go back, and that's when Shmuel comes into the Romans. They have intelligence that Jesus was in Jerusalem at the feast and what had gone on, and they go, yeah, that's old news. We already know where he is. We'll have him arrested by tomorrow. You will? Well, we want to question. We'll let you know when we have him in custody. And Shmuel says, you will? Well, no, I'm just telling you that you're in. Of course I'm not going to tell you. So, but then Shmuel gives all this big deal about who he is and what he's problem and how all of this is a difficult reality to be able to do that. And they want to know if he's broken Jewish law. They have to decide that themselves. And so now you see that they're setting up that tension between Jewish law and Roman law. And of course, the Romans, because they have the military might, they've got the weapons. They're not really interested. So then we see Atticus and the soldiers on their way to Jericho, and when he picks up that there's a personal interest in it, Atticus says, I am intrigued by your cry. He says, I've seen a man who was a paralytic dance on his feet. I've seen a man who was a trained assassin throw down his weapon. I've seen a man who terrorized Jericho for years suddenly walk into the city completely sane. Your Jesus of Nazareth did all of these things. And so he doesn't strike me as threatening or scary. And that scares me. Of course, which is setting up for when they're going to do the questioning in Quintus's office. Atticus is there. And so Quintus is unfazed by the whole thing, but Atticus realizes this man is scary because, first of all, he's not afraid of anything. And yet his power is a power that the Romans have no clue about, because it's not physical, it's not worldly, it's not muscle, it's what's true and right and good. And then that's that wonderful line between, then we go back to the boat, it's Andrew and Simon, and he says, well, do you think he's drawing up military plans when he's off by himself? Well, he always comes back with nothing. And that's when Simon says, really, if you were going to start a revolution, you picked Simon and Thaddeus to start it. Really? So, and then they come, they take the Lord into custody, and he says, keep planning, just keep going to keep planning, this will be important, and I'll be back. And then, of course, the wonderful thing is that when they get back to the camp, Simon and Andrew come running in. What happened? What did they say? Why didn't you defend him? How did you let him take him? He told us to. You weren't there, but he told us to step back. He went willingly. This is what he told us. And then they all have a different interpretation. Simon the Zealot says, he's telling us the sermon is important. We need to go and set him free. This was a code to us. It's Mary Magdalene's fault because she had him off the game because she had abandoned us. But everybody's pointing the finger at somebody else. And finally, it's Our Lady that says, boys, while you're acting like children, grow up. He told you he'd be back and not to run. And then it's Mary Magdalene who says, you're upsetting her, you're terrifying her. This is her son. Yeah, he's your leader, but it's her son. He told you it would be okay. Take him at his word, but no, they want to create all these levels of meaning and symbolism and interpretation to it. And of course, the issue is that he's detained, he's not arrested. It's Simon who says his words are a trust and peace, a call to insurrection. And so it's one of the others that turns to sense, You're the zealot. You're the only one who could take words of trust and peace and turn them into a call for insurrection. You know, that we're supposed to revolt. He said, just keep planning and he'll take care of it. So then we see our Lord go into Quintus's office, because that's that great line. He sits down and I would expect it. I expect the wild hair and animal skins and the whole bit. And Jesus says, well, I'm so glad I could disappoint you. And then, you know, he goes on about all these things. And he said, you know, if I just didn't hate your race so much, I would even offer you a job. And I looks at him and says, well, I can't really take that as a compliment. He was giving him the zingers. And Quintus is totally unfazed that Atticus is in the corner like, what's going on here? Atticus sees the way the thing has flipped and that Quintus has lost total control. And so he wants to know, he uses the whole image about the fish, the bones, and the flesh. The Far East, that's a wonderful line in there. Have you ever been to the Far East? Because of course they eat fish raw, sushi. They eat the fish raw and they spit out the bones and they eat the flesh. And he says, you know, these are the bones that you gave me and this is the flesh that I would eat. I don't want any more of that. I don't know whether I should spit you out or eat you. I don't know whether I should throw you back or I should keep you and detain you. He says, well, I can't really help it. And so then he says, he tells them these, you created a stampede, you've taken away my best follower, my best tax collector. You know, these things, you know, all things that you've done, I need you to promise not to do this anymore. And Jesus looks him square in the eye and says, well, I can't promise you anything. And he says, well, then I can't promise that I won't kill you. Well, okay, then we're clear on what we can both promise and not promise. And Quintus is in the corner like, what? And Atticus is in the corner, and Quintus goes, okay, so he says, don't make me do anything don't make me do anything. He says, I won't make you do anything, but my Father will. I have no idea what that means. Yeah, you'll find out in time. So he says, then you can go. And he asks Jesus the question, do you know what you were getting into? And that's the question that Quintus puts to the Lord. Do you know what you were getting into? And there's a pause. And the Lord looks at Quintus and he says, it was a privilege to be able to speak with you today, Quintus. Okay, nice diversion for the people, so he lets him go. And Atticus is like, he just let him go. And Quintus says, he's not really a threat. It's a nice diversion for the people for a while. And then Atticus laughs like, you have no idea what a buffoon you are. So then we switch, and the Ethiopian woman is with the paralytic, little lower through the roof. They're in the town square in Jarapata, and they're preaching about Jesus of Nazareth. And that's when Andrew, and I think it's Andrew and Philip, that finds him. And then in the meantime, Shmuel has come with the Levite from the wild Celts, telling them about all these other things. And so now they're searching for them. And that's when the rabbi, the disciple of Nicodemus comes. He's the one that has the thing over his head. He's the disciple of Nicodemus. He says, my rabbi is Nicodemus, who was impressed by Jesus of Nazareth when he met with him in Capernaum. You need to know that you are in danger. Shmuel he's here not for what is a worthy purpose. You will be taken for questioning. And he says to the Ethiopian, so Andrew in the meantime has said to the Ethiopian woman, you need to stop talking about him, you're going to get into trouble. And she says, I can't keep what I know inside. I have to be able to tell this. And then she goes on to the fact that she wants to be able to continue, but it's the disciple of Nicodemus that explains they are in danger because, and he says to her, that Shmuel will take your words and he will twist them against Jesus of Nazareth. He isn't concerned with the truth, he's concerned with destroying Jesus of Nazareth. So she says, well, I don't want to be Shmuel's disciple. Then you need to get out of here because he's going to come looking for you and he's going to use your words to be able to try to get at and to destroy Jesus. So that's when they all decided that they're going to leave at that point. And then Jesus comes back to the camp and he's there and they say, well, they released you. Well, the Romans really don't find you much of a threat. Well, what have you been doing out here? I've been praying, and did you forget we have a big event coming up? And we need to be praying. Well, things are going to get more difficult, and what are you gonna do when I'm not here? What are you gonna do when I'm not around? You need to be able to think about that. So that's when they ask for the prayer, and he teaches them the Lord's Prayer.
That was beautiful.
Okay. And then he wakes Matthew in the middle of the night, and they go off to be able, he says, I have these thoughts in my head, and I want to organize them. Of course, we know it's going to be the Sermon on the Mount. And so he and Matthew in the middle of the night are getting ready to grab his things and to be able to go off, because Matthew can write. And he's going to write all the details down, and that's actually where the next episode is going to open, is he and Matthew are sitting under the tree. Matthew's taking the notes to help the Lord put the sermon in order. These are the thoughts he has. What's the order that he's going to put them in so that people can understand the message that he wants to
But you want to be in the chosen.
I
know, so you had to do such a great job.
So we have one more episode, which will be next week. It's called, I think it's I forgot. There are 2 words to it. Just did not.
It's like great, great. something.
Great Expectations is Dickens. All right, so next week we will plan, hopefully, that we can be able to meet at 10, and then we'll be able to do time. And then the next season isn't going to be released until the fall. They finished the taping. They're actually now, I think, working on season 4, as far as I know. Well, they're at least, they're raising money for season 4. They're about halfway through. All right, there we go. Thank you very much. See you next week.